Kjære islandske kamerater og venner, kjære landsmøte i Venstre Grønne, kjære Katrin. Jeg setter så utrolig stor pris på det gode samarbeidet vi har, og det er en stor ære for meg å få hilse dere på vegne av Sosialistisk Venstreparti i Norge. Vi er nære venner, vi inspirerer hverandre, vi lærer av hverandre. Vi har blant annet delt erfaringer med hverandre om hvordan det er for et sosialistisk parti å sitte i regjering. Vi har hjulpet hverandre med gode ideer til hvordan vi kan gjøre samfunnet våre litt mer rettferdige, litt mer miljøvennlige. Og det er en inspirasjon for oss å se hvordan søsterpartiet vårt leder regjeringen på Island. Island med små forskjeller, og et Island som kommer seg ut av pandemien og krisen på en god måte. Så vi heier på deg, Katrin, og vi heier på dere i partiet. Her i Norge så har pandemien blitt en forskjellskrise. Det er dessverre sånn at det går bra på toppen av samfunnet. Børsen går så det griner, de med de store formuene de får enda mer, mens det er arbeidsfolk og barn og unge som betaler den høyeste prisen for krisen. Høy arbeidsløshet, mange jobber mer i skoler og barnehager, sykehus. Presset ligger på vanlige folk, og på barn og unge, som har hatt stengte skoler, som opplever at mange av tjenestene, fritidsaktivitetene som de pleier å ha i hverdagen, er borte. For SV så er en rettferdig gjenreisning målet nå. Vi vil ha et mer rettferdig Norge. Og vi vil ha et rettferdig grønt skifte, hvor vi får klimagassutslippene ned, og gjør det på en måte som også holder forskjellene nede. I stedet for en klimapolitikk på markedet sine premisser, vil vi ha et grønt skifte på folket sine premisser. Og for å få til det, et mer rettferdig Norge og et rettferdig grønt skifte, så jobber SV for en rød-grønn regjering. Norge skal ha valg i september. SV er på vei fremover. Vi vokser på målingene. Vi har håp om å gjøre et godt valg. Vi har håp om å komme i en posisjon avgjørende makt over samfunnsutviklingen i vårt land. Da er det en stor inspirasjon å ha et søsterparti som har gått foran, viser at det er mulig. Vi heier på dere. Vi gleder oss til vi kan møtes igjen på en litt annen måte enn gjennom denne skjermen. Men inntil da ønsker jeg dere et veldig godt landsmøte. Lykke til med det viktige politiske arbeidet. Vi støtter hverandre, er der for hverandre, og vi gleder oss til vi kan møtes på nytt.
Ég heiti Valdimar Guðmarsson, kallaður Valli og bý hér á Blönduósi, búinn að búa hér í rúm 20 ár. Þetta á víst að teljast austu húnvetningu ársins. Það var ýmislegt fínt til. Ég hef svolítið verið að vinna hér í kirkjugarðinu á Blönduósi og það var held ég flestir sem nefndu mig út af því. Ég var 12 ára gamall þegar ég byrjaði hérna inn í kjöthúsi og var hérna 13 ári í verkalýðsfélaginu. Gjörðu svo vel og njóttu vel. Svo störtuðum við hérna þessu kóteldu kvöldum. Mér er eitthvað kennt það líka og þetta byrjaði með því að hér komum við saman eitthvað 25 manns og fólk hefur komið alveg frá Vestmannaeyjum nánast eingöngu til þess að borða kóteldu á Blönduósi. Kótelöknurnar, kirkjugarðurinn og Katrín Jakobsdóttir.
Dear friends and comrades at the Left Green Movement, I'm happy and honored to have this opportunity to send my greetings to you all. I would have really loved to be there in person to greet you and to enjoy the fantastic landscapes of Iceland. But as we are still in the middle of this global pandemic, I will just have to imagine them instead. Dear friends, the common expression to heed solidarity during this pandemic has been in the same boat. But we are not. Working class people and even countries sit in very different boats concerning their means to face the pandemic and to seek shelter from it. Some countries have been hit harder by the pandemic than others, but no country has been able to avoid the social and economic consequences of the crisis. The corona crisis has treated people very differently. For some, Working from home has created new opportunities to spend more time with their family and loved ones. People have been able to communicate between cities and countries easier than ever. The pandemic might also have some positive environmental consequences, as we have now been traveling in our own home countries instead of going on holiday trips abroad. That being said, the livelihoods of many have been hit by the pandemic, and the mental health of many has been severely affected. The importance of the welfare society has never been more evident than it is now. The critical functions of the welfare society have been upheld by people working in professions such as social and healthcare, education, logistics, and sales. We all owe them all a great deal of our gratitude. There are a few important aspects that I would like to particularly address here. These are gender equality, children and youth, and poverty. First, the pandemic has had an alarming effect on gender equality. The World Economic Forum recently predicted that it will now take up to 136 years to achieve gender equality compared to an early 100 years made before this pandemic. The gender gap has in fact widened when we should be tightening it. Many of the service sector's jobs that the COVID pandemic has hit the worst employ largely women. These are sectors such as tourism, restaurants, retail, hospitality, and the list goes on. We must also not forget that women make up a vast proportion of the healthcare workers who have risked their lives every day fighting this virus in the front line. They have worked long hours with typically low income to thank them for their efforts. Inequality of the pandemic has also shown in a rise in domestic violence, while at the same time, many support services for victims have been reduced. Secondly, in my position as the Minister of Education of Finland, in this government, currently working in Finland, I have been particularly concerned about the youth. Children have been affected by the COVID pandemic severely, as schools have been forced to go over to distance learning, and also many children's hobbies have been put on hold. In Finland, we see now a growing number of students dropping out of school. We have heard reports about young people sleeping on the floors of psychiatric wards that are too full of patients, and violence of young people has also increased. Sufficient resources in public services targeted to children and youth are crucial, and the government is now directing additional resources to schools, mental health services, and also family services to address these issues. As politicians, we must make sure that children and youth are not left as the burden bearers of this pandemic. The COVID pandemic is widely viewed as a temporary shock to economic growth. However, for the majority of countries, according to studies, the economic damage could be long-lasting, and there is a real risk to people to be pushed below the poverty line permanently. The longer-term scenarios suggest that for millions all over the world, the poverty could become permanent. It is up to us as politicians to make sure that adequate financial assistance and social security is provided for all, not just few. Dear friends and comrades, a successful welfare society can be recognized through how well it can protect the most disadvantaged and the most vulnerable members of society. In the midst of a crisis and its aftercare, this is being put to a real test. A successful welfare society provides equal and just public services that safeguard people's daily lives, and this is where responsible politics is now needed. This is where the left is needed. This time is not a time for austerity measures, for privatizations or bad labor market reforms. This is really a time when we globally need investments in jobs, investments in welfare, and investments in people. Our job now is to make sure that no one is left behind. My best regards to all of you, and best of luck in the upcoming September elections.
Ég heiti Aldís Albjarnar og kennari og leiðsögumaður. Svo heppin að hafa þessi 2 störf. Og ég var líka heppin því að Vinstri græn voru stofnuð því að það eini almennilegi flokkurinn. Auðvitað vinna mín áhugamál, en þar fyrir utan það náttúrulega dans. Ég ólst upp við það því ég var krakki. Já, það var bara mikill hiti í pólitíkinni á þeim tíma. Með kennslu þá tók ég meiraprófi og ég var ein kvenna með 19 mönnum, en ég náði að vera þessa prófinu, svo glemdi ég öllu daginn eftir. Ég skulle sleppa þessu með einhvern. Það var bara svolítið gott á.
Komið sæl, kæru allir Íslandi. Mér langar eftir að hitta ykkur. Eitt ári á koronaveirinu hefur verið það að ég hef ekki komist í heimsókn af Íslandi í meir en 1 ár og það nú ekki gott. Ég segi venjulega það að ef allir færingar komist í heimsókn af Íslandi í að minnsta kosti 3-4 mánuður, það voru allir færingar fullveldis fólk og Færeyjar voru frelst og sjálfstætt ríki eftir fáum árum. Við erum afar stolt að fylgjast með ykkur í ykkar stóru vinsli í ríkisstjórn. Forsætisráðherrar, alþingisforseti, alþingisfólk og allir meðlimir og aðstoðarfólk í Vinstri grænum. Klára þetta afar flott og við vonumst alltaf besta í komandi kosningum í haust. Og við sjá það aftur að eins og eftir hrun og aftur núna í koronaveirinu, það Vinstri græn að gefa okkur próf fyrir það að eins og bandaríkismenn segja, when the going gets tough, the tough gets going, og bara alveg flott með það. Hér í Færeyjum við ekki með sömu góðu leiðtogar í ríkisstjórn með hægri sambandsstjórn í Færeyjum. Þeir eins og við vitum, þeir verið að selja land okkar til privat, bæði fisk og auðlindir, og líka nú aftur að selja Færeyjar til hernaðar útgerð frá Danmarkunni, så við erum mikla vinstu hér. Men þá svo það jo sögulegt ár að bæði á Íslandi og núna líka í Grænlandi, þá við nú á fyrsta sinni með forsætisráðherra á Íslandi og í Grænlandi frá IA með móti með forsætisráðherra frá 2 systurflokkum. Og til miður við ekki að gera það í Færeyjum. Það kannski kemur. Við vonum það. Så langar mig líka að senda sérstaka kveðju til Steingríms. Steingrim, við skiljum það að þú nú hætta og það bara svolítið skrítið að hugsa sér. Þetta bara voða mikil ferð og glæslig ferð til að vera í íslenskum og alþjóða stjórnmálum frá alltíð Mandalánum til stofnun VGS í 99, þar sem ég var svo heppinn að vera með, og líka í ríkisstjórn og öllu. Þetta bara dásamlega glæslig ferð. Og okkur langar sjálfsagt að hafa samband með líka áfram. Og ef það finnst nokkuð séns, Katrín og Öllfrid og Steingrímur, þá við líka með landsfund okkar í Færeyjum núna 21. og 22. mæ. Ára þetta svo flott með koronaveirinu og við hefum gjört það líka í Færeyjum. Så kannski finnst lítinn séns, því okkur langar bara voða mikið eftir að hitta ykkur anleis til anleis. Og så bara fyrirgeðu Katrin, ég skil það að þú ert lendið svolítið erfiðleikum í tinginum. Mér reyna að svara því að hvað segir það sem högni á Ítal í Færjum. Og það nú ekki einfalt mál að svara því, men vi kom tala það vonandi það við hittumst fljótt. Her fra Færjum sender vi bara bestu öskur og bestu báráttu kvæður til komandi alþingiskostningar. Við mjög stolt af ykkur og vonum að við sjáumst alveg flott ef það verður hér í Færjum eða á Íslandi. Og góðan landsfund.
Komið þið sæl og velkomin á þennan panel hluta af Landsfundi VG. Þessi panel myndi fara næstu 45 mínútum myndi fara fram á ensku. Ég vil láta ykkur vita að í næstu viku verður hann aðgengilegur með íslenskum texta á heimasíðu VG. Og nú skipti ég yfir í ensku. Welcome to this panel event on feminist activism and abortion rights at the party conference of the left green. In Iceland, we finally got new law on abortion 2 years ago, where the rights of women has been expanded. In some other countries around us, the legislation has gone a very different direction. And for the next 45 minutes, we will be discussing this issue. And we have here like 3 amazing panelists. It's Justina Grosel, Katie Darcy, and Silja Bára Ómarsdóttir. I'm going to start by asking you to just introduce yourself and your connection with feminist activism and abortion, this issue, this topic.
Okay. Hi, I hope I sound good. Is it okay? Yeah, okay, super. Hi, Justina Grosel, sometimes called Saya. I live in Iceland 7 years now, and since actually 2015, when the government in Poland changed, there happens to be a need to protest here and support protesters in Poland because the new government just the law and push abortion laws into the higher risk, let's say, for women, and like so many changes since 2015 in Poland, and they are not going to a good direction, let's say. And I am part of Dziewuchy Islandia. It's a group, Goals, it's not like girls, Goals Iceland here, the group of Polish feminists. It's like women, girls, and we are here we are protest here in Iceland a few times, and to support people that protest in Poland. It's just like, this is what we can do. We can show people in Poland, like, you are with us in our hearts, in our minds. We are thinking about you, and we are concerned about what is happening in Poland.
Thank you. Katie.
Hi, so my name is Kathy Darcy. I'm a feminist poet, academic and activist, and I suppose particularly a pro-choice activist. I'm one of the regional co-conveners for the Irish Abortion Rights Campaign, which is a national all-island organisation to campaign abortion rights for everybody. And I was one of the regional chairs of the Together for Yes campaign in 2018, which successfully campaigned to repeal, for the first time since 1983, allow people to legally access abortion services in Ireland. And I've been living here since September, but still obviously very heavily involved in the Irish campaign.
Yes. And Silja Bára.
Yes, hi. My name is Silja Bára Ómarsdóttir. I'm a professor of international affairs at the University of Iceland. And my interest in abortion rights stems from, I moved to the US about 30 years ago and discovered that abortion was an incredibly political issue, prized, because I'd always assumed that it was free here in Iceland. Moving back, I realized that the law, which was very liberally practiced, was actually quite restrictive because a woman had to ask for permission to have an abortion. And like you said, until 2 years ago, that was still the case. So being an academic, I mean, my way of activism is often writing and sort of putting issues on the agenda. So I wrote a book with a friend, which we published in 2015 when the law that legalized abortion or made it accessible in 1975 at the 40th anniversary. And debate really sort of started to take off from there. You, of course, were in the Women's Rights Association at the time and put this issue also on the agenda there. So that discussion really started to move. And then when Svandís became Minister of Health in 2017, I remember one of the first things I did was send her a message and say, now you really got to fix this. And she did. And that's what having a feminist in office means, is that you can see these movements, these changes happen.
Exactly. I'm also like very focused on feminist activism and that role. For example, in Poland, we all saw the black umbrellas.
Yeah.
And could you tell us like what about that symbol and what has been happening since 2016? 15?
Yeah, circa.
Yeah.
Okay, so a black umbrella is it's so like Poland now. It's highly symbolic with the feminism and this abortion law. And what I'm definitely would like to point that this is abortion, and it's just the peak of the iceberg. Okay, it's not just abortion. If somebody is thinking these protesters and protesting in Poland now, it's just about abortion law. It's just, no, sorry. If you go to protests, bigger protests, from time to time, although since October 2020, they were like every day. But now, if I'm watching what is going on in Poland, it's like every day is happening something, and girls from it's how to translate this OSK. It's like the national strike. A national strike, women's strike.
Okay.
So this is how I can explain that. They are doing like everyday job. It's like with information, with protests, with some votes online. If I'm going through my Facebook or email, it's like every day something is happening.
Wow.
Today I was just like checking the post from today, and there was a list every day from 29th of April till yesterday. It's like what was happening. Every day is happening something, and it's not abortion law. It's just like women rights. It's like LGBTQ rights. Everything. Every day something. There's no quiet day in Poland. Girls are doing the job always, every day, and this is amazing. And there's a huge change. From my point of view, there's a huge change. Maybe like with the older part of nation, maybe there's a little bit trouble to work with the feminism and
more conservative.
Because it's like people watching this national, for example, people watching national TV, and it's completely in the hands of the government. So actually, when you watch national TV and then you watch some other media, then it's like, okay, we have two words in this country, okay? Yeah. In this beautiful country, you have two words, and it's amazing. It's like mind-blowing how the information in national TV are set up and how they're like in other media. Going back to umbrella, it was about one protest, and it was a rainy day in Warsaw, and the people. It was said like, okay, in Warsaw they appear like, let's say 2,000 people, 2,000 protesters. Okay, no, it was like thousands. It was like 20 something, and it was rainy day, and suddenly the whole Warsaw was stuck with those umbrellas, and you couldn't see people. You could see on the photos now, let's say on some video, that this is like the umbrella is going. And you know, this umbrella is also like this sign of covering somebody. It's, so yeah, this is how the umbrella became the symbol. But then this symbol came up, like the lightning. Yeah, it's a lot of things happening when you go with the symbolism and some trying to find the one sign. No, you will not find it because it's so many things happening. I think it is because of that.
Yeah.
But when I was like in Poland and I was wearing this, my friends from Iceland were like saying to me, like, watch out, okay? Because you might be hit, you might be abused. And actually, it happened just. I wasn't hit or anything like that, but there was at least the looks. You know, people like move away from this one, or at least in one situation when actually the boy took his girlfriend and is like, "You will not walk beside that devil," or something like that, and he was just like, "Move her." She was talking with him, it's like la, la, la. And he noticed the sign. It's like, "You will not go because, like, I don't know, you will be sick by it."
Yeah.
Okay, dude, good for you.
Yeah.
And I was proud. I was like, okay, yes, yes, this is the fight. We have to dig a little bit, everyone. And yeah, and feminism in Poland is growing, and I find it, I think it is really beautiful.
Yeah. Thank you. Kathy, we moved to Ireland, from Poland to Ireland. So could you tell us in more depth about the situation there? And, you know, you've got some country,
Yes, yeah, there's better news, and there's also so much more work to do, which is so important. And because I'm going to forget when I get into the stream of things, I want to agree with Justina and say, like, the abortion rights campaign and my activism and Irish feminist activism is not about a single issue. It's about everything that affects women and also trans people and all marginalised people in Ireland. And abortion is one of those things that particularly affects, abortion access affects marginalised people. So I'll come to that. But just kind of to give a potted history of what's happened in Ireland. In 1983, there was a referendum to insert this Eighth Amendment into the Constitution, which essentially said that a fetus as the person who was carrying the fetus, which, as you can imagine, led to decades of unimaginable suffering and death. And you can research, eventually the European Court of Human Rights ruled that it was torture, the legislation, but it still took the government an incredibly long time. And I really want to stress that it happened. The referendum in 2018 happened because of grassroots feminist activism. There were some Irish government parties who want to take credit and say that they did it, and they didn't do it. This was a result of grassroots feminist activism. So basically 30 odd years of activism and being silenced and ignored and pushed to the other side of the street and, you know, labelled as a dangerous woman led finally to our 2018 referendum. We set up an organisation and the coalition, how can I not remember the name of the Coalition for Abortion Rights? Anyway, huge national organisations grew up from grassroots activists. The campaign was successful. 66.4% of voters voted in favour of repealing the Eighth Amendment, and it was repealed. And we got legislation finally, because until that time, there had been essentially a complete ban on abortion. Doctors weren't trained at all, even in the case of risk to life or, in fact, death of a mother or a pregnant person. Doctors had no training. It was kind of England's problem. We were exporting the problem and just pretending it wasn't there. So women had to travel, and if you couldn't travel, then you couldn't have an abortion. So in 2018, we got legislation, and a lot of people thought that that was the end, that we had won, and the job was done, and that was everything we had to do. And that's not the case. And I think that's the most important thing I need to say whenever I talk about abortion in Ireland. It's not done. And as I said at the start of this, the most vulnerable people are the ones who have been left behind. So the legislation stipulated a review after 3 years. Those 3 years are now up. The review has to happen this year. So we in the Abortion Rights Campaign have been putting pressure on the Minister, Stephen Donnelly, to have the review. It's moving incredibly slowly. The terms of reference still haven't been, we don't know what's going to happen with the review, but things that have, the 3-day wait, which is in our current legislation, has to be removed. So currently, if somebody wants to have an abortion, they have to go to the doctor. If they fulfill the terms, which is up to 12 weeks, beyond which it becomes incredibly restrictive, then they have to go away and for 3 days, think, and then come back again after 3 days. It's an incredibly infantilizing and humiliating part of our legislation, and the WHO has said that it's not of benefit and that it's actually harmful to women and pregnant people. So we need that removed from our legislation. We need there to be safe access zones, which are also called buffer zones, outside hospitals and clinics to prevent anti-choice and misogynist activists from harassing and scaring and attacking people who are trying to access abortion services. So that's currently happening in Ireland, and the then Minister for Health, Simon Harris, promised when our legislation came through in 2018 that he would incest zone legislation. That still has not happened. Our current Minister, Stephen Donnelly, has also failed to put that legislation into place, and we need that to happen. We need our legislation to be trans-inclusive. It currently is not, and as we all know, trans people face multiple additional burdens accessing healthcare, and we need our legislation to acknowledge that trans people are, if anything, more prevented from accessing abortion healthcare and more likely to suffer as a result of restrictive legislation. My notes, I don't want to forget anything. Rural provision in Ireland is really, really bad. There are. I don't think if there's an entire county anymore, but there are huge areas of Ireland where no doctor would provide abortion services, either due to just a lack of provision in general or due to conscientious objection, which we call refusal to provide care, because that's what it is. And we need the legislation to take that into account, and we need the government to take action to ensure that people can access abortion somewhere close to them, because people are still either not able to access. So those are the main issues that we need this review to address, and we need our legislation to actually do what we set out to do and provide abortion access to everybody who needs it. We need decriminalisation, I think is our ultimate aim, but for the moment we need the legislation to stop marginalising and penalising our most vulnerable in Ireland. So just to say, as regards wider feminism, as I said, the Abortion Rights Campaign isn't a single issue group, and we're overtly trans, very much wanting to make sure that everybody knows that the Abortion Rights Campaign is trans inclusive, and that we're going to be part of the fight for trans rights and against transphobia in Ireland and in the world. And we're also sex worker positive, so we're part of the fight in Ireland towards listening to the voices of sex workers as regards what legislation is necessary for sex workers to be safe and to not again be further penalised by people who purport to be protecting them. I could talk forever. I'll probably just leave it there.
Okay.
Thank you.
So you got new law 3 years ago, and hoping that was the fight is still
and I think for pro-choice activists, we all know the fight never ends. It will never end.
Yeah. What about Iceland, Silja?
Well, I think to begin with, I think we must acknowledge that we were nowhere in the situation where that either Poland or Ireland were when our legislation was changed 2 years ago. But there are very important points to keep in mind here. When in Poland, there was a regression, a backsliding of rights from communist-era Poland to the current situation. And that is a reminder that we always need to stay alert and protect the rights that we have, and not assume that because we've gotten to one point that the rights are going to remain protected. And what Kathy mentioned with the 3-day wait in Ireland, I mean, that's something that's in the US. That's basically what the permission meant here. It's a message that you are not to be trusted to make decisions about your body, and that's what the big change for me in as well as of course the time limit change with the 2019 law was that the decision is in the hands of the person making the decision, who is carrying the fetus. As happy as I was on the day that the law passed, I immediately wrote down a few points, which was that I would like to see the law made gender neutral, so that it doesn't say women, that it says pregnant people. And Icelandic, of course, is a difficult language to deal with in that because it's so highly gendered that isn't almost innately, even as an activist, I sort of balk when I see, pregnant people in Icelandic instead of a feminized word.
Just do that.
Yes, exactly. I would also like to, and I think we've seen now with the recent actions in Poland, not that I want to encourage abortion tourism or the need for it, but I would like to see that any person who needs the procedure can have access to it, and not just those who are insured in Iceland. Because you could have a situation where somebody realizes while traveling here that they need this service. And then I think the way the law is framed, you wouldn't even be able to get a privately funded. I haven't looked into it very carefully, but it says those insured in Iceland are covered by it. And so there are ways of still pushing the margins that I would like to see us have a very open and accessible framework for people who need this service. The issues, like what Kathy mentioned about these deserts, these areas in Ireland where you don't have access, I think we tend to think of Iceland having, people in Iceland having equal access to healthcare. We hear about, birthing centers, people who live in more rural areas, they need to come to the big town in their area to give birth. That also refers to or is the situation for abortions. So if you're from a small rural area and your doctor is not positive, or somebody that you maybe don't trust because of personal relations or are uncomfortable with reaching out to, you may be one of the people who needs to travel.
Yeah.
So we need to recognize that is also a situation, and having home abortions available, even then through telemedicine, that there is a helpline, and I think a woman-centered, inclusive to trans women-centered healthcare service would be something that could possibly provide that service. So I think these are the areas that we still need to we keep pushing the boundaries for.
Yeah, thank you, yeah.
And maybe at the end we can talk about the global situation, because we actually have it fairly good here, but it's not perfect, because like both of them said, the fight never ends.
Yeah, for example, in north of Ireland.
Would you like me to speak about?
Yeah, I think it's actually to speak about North.
I think it's incredibly important to not forget what's happening in the north of Ireland, because you guys know it's a really complicated situation politically, especially now with Brexit. And, the people, again, who are most affected are the most vulnerable people. And in particular, people who are looking for abortions have absolutely been forgotten and left behind in the political debacle. What's happening at the moment, and I was saying to Celia as I came in, I have to check every day because it's different every day in the north. And I just want to draw attention to the incredible work of activists in the north of Ireland. The Alliance for Choice are an incredible organisation who do loads and loads of work all the time. I don't know where they get their energy from.
Can you say the name again?
The Alliance for Choice. You can follow them online. They have beautiful merchandise if you'd like to support them. So basically what's happened is abortion was finally decriminalised. So the north of Ireland was still under an 1800s law from England, 1861, I think, offences against the person law, and people had no access to abortion at all. And finally, I think 2 years ago, a law was passed decriminalising abortion in the north, and that was cause for celebration. But of course, as always, it did not mean that we had won. The health minister refused. Still not happened several years later. So because it's decriminalised, the Alliance for Choice and other feminist activists and healthcare providers can assist women to undergo medical abortion, but there's no funding from the health department for that. So various health trusts have, using their own budgets, have set up abortion services, and they are constantly running out of money and having to close those services again. So recently the Western Trust suspended its abortion services. You can imagine what a terrifying situation. Abortions and don't know from day to day where, if anywhere, will provide them with an abortion. So last week at Westminster, because in certain cases in law, Westminster can intervene in the north of Ireland if it's felt that action isn't being taken and there's kind of a life and death situation. So finally, after a long, long time of pressure, a ruling was made in Westminster last week that they would act and they would force the north of Ireland to commission abortion services. But I suppose activists are cynical about that because statements like this have been made several times and people keep saying, yes, we will take action, just, not right now. So people are still waiting.
So the hindrances, that is what, healthcare, workers, or are you talking about doctors, or like what is it?
It's politicians. The hindrance is the Stormont Assembly will not move on abortion. I don't want to rant angrily, but there's an awful lot of anti-choice feeling in the Stormont Assembly, and there are some people fighting for abortion access too. For the moment, the overall feeling is that they just don't want to think about it and just put it off and not deal with the issue, as was the case in Ireland for so many years. It's just so easy to blind yourself to the issue, especially when it affects women and vulnerable communities. So people who need abortions in the north of Ireland, and you can imagine with the current pandemic restrictions, how is someone to travel to the UK, to England, to have an abortion? How can they pay for that? Can they even get there? Quarantine regulations. It's a horrific situation. Exactly. I think it's important that the eyes of the world are on the north of Ireland at the moment and on what's happening.
Yeah, exactly. Justina, you were very active here in Iceland and have been so part of some kind of the Polish diaspora. Are there groups like your group? Are they active in other countries?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
It's like Dziewuchy, this first part, it's like Iceland, France, Germany, Czech Republic, Sweden, Norway, United States, and so on, so on. So yeah, those groups are, and you could see that when, while especially those bigger protests, then you could see that they're like, okay, we are protesting from Stockholm, we are protesting. And so on and so on. And bigger cities, small villages, sometimes it was just like one Polish girl standing in some south of France city with some banner, and I like, okay, I'm with you. Hello. Hello from south of France. So yes, this is like huge group, and this group, like you mentioned, is this COVID situation, and actually I was thinking like Celia is like, when we would put some graphic designs here, Celia and Iceland is like, okay, here with the rules, then it's Kati, and it's like there's a Poland. And Poland is going always constantly down, because like Ireland went from this situation where fetus is a human being with the full rights of the citizen, and now in Poland there's this situation. So when, for example, okay, I am the object, okay, and I'm going to the doctor, okay, I'm pregnant, I don't want to be impregnant. But this, what I have inside me, those few cells, it has full citizen rights. Okay, this is already a human being, and this is the biggest change, really low change in Polish law, established like 22nd of October 2020. It was published that day. This is like the huge situation, because this created by the state of justice, that it is illegal. Actually, yesterday or the day before, the European Justice, I don't know what is the name actually, but like the highest European Justice decided that this, like Polish one, which creating now new laws, is illegal.
Okay.
Okay, so this is like, we are so happy in Poland because this is like, okay, so this abortion, new abortion law is illegal. But even though like people has huge troubles with being taken care of, and it's also it's tricky because if you have money and you can go everywhere to the country where you can have abortion, okay? But what about those small cities you've mentioned, like even in Iceland, when you have like small what to do, right? I mean, this situation, it's not like, okay, this is my body, this is my decision, I'm going to do this way, okay? No, it's like now in Poland and with bad financial situation. It's not obvious. Okay, we have this great abortion dream team. Actually, I just saved a photo from them. It's like, maybe I just go to that because there will be like numbers, and numbers says a lot. It's like...
you can see the situation in Poland. You have not been like sitting and waiting. Very active and online, and then getting all the support from
exactly. It's like
the rest of the societies around the world.
Like you've mentioned, Celia, it would be great to have support here in Iceland for women. Okay, there will be contact. There will be this aunt. We call that in let's say in Poland aunt. So she will be the organization. She will be helpful with organizing abortion, and this is great, but still, this is to do that, okay? Isn't just let's just have this beautiful normal laws in the country and stay in the country and being taken care of in the country. And no, it's now it's I do appreciate that. I live here, okay?
Yeah.
And just like this is so scary to be in Poland, and I'm thinking like, okay, when your pregnancy is like you is something going on bad at your pregnancy, and you're going to the doctor, and someone's like, what next? Will they taking care of me nicely? In a good way, in a proper way? Will I have every test? And no, this is so scary because you can go to the doctor and
don't trust the healthcare system.
Totally.
Yeah.
Because somebody is like, you're going to the doctor and you see this huge cross, and because the Catholicism, and like, come on, we have country and we have religion, and where that goes? Come on. Oh yeah, and this abortion dream team, it says like, for example, and great job, girls, abortion dream team and all of the people who helping. It's like during the 6 months of Polish people in access to abortion, 597 could terminate the pregnancy in the foreign clinics in the second trimester. The financial support was, I will not count that in Icelandic kronas. Oh, it's a lot, let's say. And what I'm thinking is the most important, because this shows that education and knowledge in Poland is really not the best level. Almost 7,000 phone calls asking for help.
7,000.
Help slash give me some answers, give me some education. So people do need that. If the government thinks like, oh, there will be no abortion because we have a new law. No, come on. And also I remember I was like that was crazy because I was like 12 maybe years old, and maybe 15, and there was like this some Timarit like magazine in Poland, as like highly Vinstry, like left side, and there was a huge article about how abortion numbers before 1993, when this new abortion law came, like existing through that time, and what was before. And suddenly the numbers were like, I wish I could find that, because that was, let's say, 50,000 abortion made, okay? No reason, 50,000 abortion. And suddenly we have 1993, 1994, and it's like 2,000. It's like, come on, 48. It's just like a sample. I don't remember the numbers, but I remember I was a little girl and I was reading this article and I was like, okay, I'm not the best in math, but this is something wrong, okay? Where are those people? Is this gray zone? But you have to have money. Do you? Do you really have to? And this what this amazing job of the OSK National Strike, Women's Strike Organization, and the others organizations like Dziewuchy. It's like everyday job, and I really fingers are crossed that they will manage to change that, even though informations are not good, because this is like the government is just digging and suddenly doing illegal, as we know now, steps.
I'm thinking I'm going to move to, because we have not much time
Okay,
left.
sorry. I could say talking about that.
We're also waiting for. Because you're talking about the church and the state, and Silja Bára, if you talk about in international development, what's happening.
No, I think what Justina is describing is exactly what happens when these rights are limited. Is not that the number of abortions goes down. It's just the number of legal abortions that goes down. So women and pregnant people are pushed in. They're marginalized and made to feel ashamed. And the people with money will never be affected by these regulations, these restrictions, because they are able to travel. And we know that abortion tourism exists, that people related to the men, mostly, who set these laws, will be able to access these services because they can travel. So we're seeing an increased division based on status, class, and money. And of course, we're seeing an international attack on these rights, led under the Donald Trump era by the US. Thankfully, that has been reverted, and the Biden administration is attempting to create the situation where we on support for family planning services and advice affected by the American Foreign Assistance and Development Assistance. And we're seeing what is called the gender ideology, the attack on gender ideology, which is an unholy trinity or unholy alliance of countries that you don't really think about as allies. We see Saudi Arabia, Iran, the US, and Russia, the US under Trump again, forming an alliance to restrict women's and non-binary people's rights. It's often framed in terms of protecting the family, that they are protecting women's, and that's a binary woman that is being talked about, right to home. But usually the unspoken message is that they shouldn't have the choice of doing anything else. And these campaigns are strong. They are very vocal. And they are a cause for concern in the international system. And we who are fortunate enough to live in countries that have strong status of these rights, we need to take the responsibility of campaigning for them internationally.
Yeah. We have a far way to go.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I would say like this is this is amazing that the country's girls, let's say girls, just can organize themselves and help themselves. But like going back, why not just create the law that will be good enough and proper for everyone? And like we mentioned, like on the beginning, this is the top of the iceberg. This is not just abortion. Like, there's so many subjects, and you cannot. It's like what women's are like. It's more or less 50% of just more or less 50% of every society. Okay, so if you want to damage our laws in healthy care, okay, so it's like. You damaging 50% of your nation. So how come? So this is great that we can work together and create together. And I would be really grateful if, and I know that Icelanders, for example, because we are talking from here, giving amazing support for our case, and it would be great to have this organization here, Anti. But on the back of the head is like, oh, why? Why even we have to?
Yeah.
This is amazing. And watching Poland from the distance, it's just mind-blowing.
I think we sent our support to Poland and north of Ireland when we closed this panel. Thank you so much for the conversation.
Thank you.
And skiptir hún yfir í íslensku. Takk fyrir að vera með okkur hér. Við tökum núna pásu, landsfundurinn tekur núna pásu og byrjar aftur klukkan 12:30. Takk fyrir.